My name is Ethan Cole, and I am 34 years old. I live in a quiet little town called Ashwood, Oregon. And if you've never heard of it, that's because it's the kind of place where people don't show up on maps. Unless you're lost or running from something. I've lived here my whole life, born and raised in the same yellow farmhouse my parents built with their own two hands out past the old mill road, the kind of house with creaky floorboards, and a kitchen that still smells like my mom's apple pie, even though she's been gone. 10 years now. I'm not rich, not fancy, not the kind of guy who wears suits or drives a sports car. But I've always prided myself on being honest, hardworking, and doing right by people. I build things. That's what I do. I'm a contractor, a builder. I started small, fixing porches and replacing roofs. But over the years, I worked my way up. I saved every penny. I learned how to read blueprints. I studied codes. I showed up early and stayed late. I did everything right. And because of it, I built a name for myself in Ashwood. People called me when they needed a deck, a shed, or even a full home renovation. I wasn't flashy, but I was good, consistent, reliable, and people trusted me. Then came the chance of a lifetime. About 2 years ago, I got a call from someone named Daniel Hartman. He said he was a businessman from Portland, but looking to invest in rural development, wanted to bring affordable housing to small towns like Ashwood. He said he'd seen some of my work, a deck I built for the town's community center, and he was impressed. He wanted to partner with me to build a small apartment complex right on the edge of town. 10 units, nothing huge, but enough to make a real difference, and enough to finally give me a shot at real financial freedom. We met at the Diners Edge, a little greasy spoon off Main Street, over coffee. He wore a navy blazer and spoke with this calm, confident voice. He said he had investors lined up. He had permits almost approved. All he needed was a contractor. He said he wanted someone local, someone with integrity, someone like me. I was flattered. Honestly, I was shocked someone like him would care about a place like this. He said he'd cover all material costs. I'd handle labor and management. We'd split the profits 50-50 when it's sold or rented out. He promised it would go up for sale within 6 months and return over $200,000 in profit. I ran the numbers over and over. I could afford to take on the labor. I had a great crew. I trusted them with my life. We'd worked together for years. They believed in me. And when I told them about the project, they jumped on board. We started clearing land within 3 weeks. We broke ground in July. Everything was going great for the first 6 months. We built strong. The foundation was poured. The frames went up. The plumbing and electrical was in. We were ahead of schedule. Daniel came by every few weeks, took photos, smiled at my guys, shook my hand, said the investors were thrilled. He even brought a catered lunch one Tuesday for the whole crew. I started thinking this was the break I always needed. Maybe I could finally fix the roof on my house, or take a real vacation, or even start a savings plan for a family someday. I was 34 and still single, not for lack of trying, but I'd always put my work first, and now it seemed like all that was about to pay off. Then something changed. Daniel stopped showing up. His calls went to voicemail. His emails stopped coming in. I texted him once or twice asking about the next phase of funding, the insulation, drywall, and flooring, the stuff we couldn't do without materials. He never replied. I waited another week. Then another. I had my crew keep working out of pocket, buying supplies on credit, because I believed in the project, believed in my word, and believed that Daniel would come through. I mean, how could he leave me hanging like this? We were almost done. All that was left was interior painting and finishing touches. I paid my guys out of my own savings, telling them Daniel's were delayed, but it was coming. Then one day I drove out to the site, and my blood ran cold. The entire complex was occupied. Every unit had someone living in it. I saw furniture through the windows, laundry on balconies, a kid's bike leaning against a railing. I parked and walked inside Unit 1. A woman was cooking dinner. I asked her what she was doing. She looked at me confused and said she'd signed a lease 2 weeks ago, paid first, last, and security directly to the owner, Daniel Hartman. She showed me the lease agreement, a legal document with his name on it, and the city seal. It looked real, official. I ran outside, checked the other units. Same thing. People had moved in, leases signed, payments made, and not $1 had come to me. I drove straight to Daniel's listed office in Portland. But the building was a shell, nothing but empty floors, and a janitor who said the company had cleared out 2 months ago. I called Daniel again. This time he picked up. I could hear waves in the background. He was at the coast. He said, "Hey, Ethan, how's it going?" I said, Hey, Ethan, me, you stole my project. You signed leases and took money from tenants and paid me nothing." He laughed like it was some kind of joke, then said, "Look, Ethan, you were the contractor, not the owner. You built it for me as part of our verbal agreement. I never signed anything binding. It was all handshake and trust." But he claimed I had agreed to work for a percentage that was contingent on sales, and since the units were leased, not sold, I owed myself nothing. He said I was welcome to sue him, but he had lawyers and shell companies all over the state, And by the time I untangled it, all the project would be long gone, and I'd be broke. I hung up and sat in my truck for an hour, my hands shaking not from fear, but from rage. I had poured 2 years of my life into that building. I had trusted him. I had risked everything, my savings, my reputation, my crew's loyalty. And he had taken it all like it was nothing. I went home. That night I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about every decision I'd made, what I should have done differently, why I hadn't gotten everything in writing, why I didn't see it coming when the sun came up. I made a choice. I wasn't going to sue him. I was going to ruin him. I started with research. Daniel Hartman wasn't from Portland. He wasn't even a real estate developer. His real name was Daniel Harris. And he had a history. He had done the same thing in 3 other towns: Silver Creek, Idaho, Bend, Montana, and Cedar Grove, Washington. In each case, he'd find a local contractor, promise big returns, disappear after the building was finished, seize control, and start leasing it out. He'd use fake business names, shell corporations, and temporary addresses to stay ahead of the law. Law enforcement had looked into him, but he was always just out of reach, because the victims didn't have contracts or clear proof. And by the time they did, he was already in a new town, starting over. I tracked down 2 of the contractors he'd screwed over, one in Montana named Rick and one in Idaho named Tony. We started texting, sharing stories, comparing notes. I found a 3rd guy in Washington named Carl. We all had the same story, trusted him, believed in the dream, got burned, then discarded. We were all blue-collar guys, good at our jobs, but not lawyers, not sneaky, not used to being played so brutally. We decided to stop being victims. We formed a group. We called it the Foundation Alliance, not because we were fancy, but because he had destroyed the foundation of our lives, and we were rebuilding it with revenge at the center. Our first move was documentation. We collected every text, email, photo, voicemail we could find. I had saved every message Daniel had ever sent me, even the casual ones. We printed them out, cross-referenced dates. We hired a private investigator, a former cop named Linda who worked out of Eugene. She dug up court records, business filings, rental agreements, everything we needed to prove Daniel had knowingly taken property that wasn't his. We also interviewed tenants. Many of them had no idea the building was stolen. They thought they were renting legally. We explained the truth and asked if they'd be willing to testify. Most said yes. They didn't want to pay rent to a fraud. We even found one tenant who was a paralegal and helped us organize the evidence into a proper legal complaint. But we didn't file it, yet we wanted more. We wanted him to feel safe, to think he'd won, so we could take it all away while we were building the case. I started watching Daniel. He didn't know it, but he was living in Ashwood now, in a big modern house on the lake. He'd bought it cash. He was driving a black Range Rover, wearing designer clothes, throwing parties. He'd moved his wife and 2 kids, and he was living like a king, built on my sweat and betrayal. I didn't confront him. I didn't yell or threaten. I just watched. I learned his routine every morning. He went to the lake house gym at 7:30 sharp every Tuesday, and Thursday he met with a financial advisor in Bend. Every Saturday he took his kids to the Science Museum. I memorized it all. Then I started making moves. I reached out to the local news station, not the big ones, the small community outlet that covered Ashwood and the surrounding towns. I sent them an anonymous tip with a summary of Daniel's scam and links to the evidence. I didn't want credit. I just wanted the truth out. I waited 3 days, and then it dropped a 6-minute video exposé titled "Local Real Estate Investor Accused of Construction Scam Victims Speak Out." They showed photos of the apartment complex, interviews with Rick, Tony, and Carl. They played a clip of me standing off camera, my voice edited, so you couldn't recognize me, talking about how I'd trusted him and lost everything. They showed the lease agreements, the empty office in Portland, the paper trail of fake companies. It went viral. Locals shared it hundreds of times. The comment section flooded with anger. People were outraged that someone could come into their town, pretend to help, and steal from one of their own. The town council held an emergency meeting. The police started an investigation. Daniel gave a statement to the paper, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that I was a disgruntled contractor who hadn't been paid because he didn't earn it. But nobody believed him. The damage was done. Then we dropped the lawsuit. Not just me, the 4 of us filed jointly in federal court for fraud, conspiracy, and unjust enrichment. We didn't ask for money. We asked for ownership of the apartment complex to be returned to the builders since the fraudulent transfer had occurred. We included every piece of evidence, every tenant statement, every document. Linda had found. The case was assigned to Judge Margaret Bloom in Eugene. The hearing was set for 3 months out. But before it even happened, Daniel tried to flee. He packed his family into the Range Rover at 2 in the morning, tried to drive to Canada. But he didn't make it past Seattle. The FBI had been monitoring him ever since the news story broke. They pulled him over for a missing taillight. Turned out he had outstanding warrants from Montana and Idaho. He was arrested on scene, handcuffed in front of his kids. his wife screaming at him, saying she knew something was wrong. She had suspected for months that the money was dirty, that the house was stolen. But he told her to stay quiet for the kids. The trial lasted 6 weeks. It was brutal for me emotionally. But every day I sat in the courtroom, I felt stronger. I watched Daniel squirm under oath, his lies unraveled one by one. The judge ruled in our favor. She ordered the apartment complex returned to the 4 of us. We had to pay a small fee to clear the title. But after that, it was ours. We decided to keep it running, lease it out, fairly hire local workers, give back to the community. We renamed it Foundation Court, as a symbol of what can be rebuilt after betrayal. We split the profits evenly and donated 10% to a fund for small contractors who have been scammed. Daniel was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for interstate fraud. He lost everything. His wife divorced him in prison, took the kids, and the lake house. She found out his scam had destroyed her sister's business in Idaho. That was the final straw. He was disbarred from any future real estate ventures. And when he gets out, he'll be a registered fraud offender, unemployable in any legitimate business. But the real twist came 6 months after the trial. I was at a town hall meeting about affordable housing when a woman approached me. She was in her early 30s with short brown hair and kind eyes. She said her name was Sarah. She told me she'd been following my story. She thought I was brave. She said she used to work for Daniel too, as his office manager in Portland. She said she'd known about the scams but was too afraid to speak up because he threatened her. She had a child and no money. She lived in fear. But now she was free. She wanted to make it right. We started talking. We had coffee, then dinner, then more. We spent months getting to know each other, and slowly something real grew between us. We weren't rushing it. We weren't trying to prove anything. But 2 months ago, she moved into my yellow farmhouse. The one my parents built. It still smells like apple pie. And now it smells like her perfume too. She's teaching me how to cook real meals, not just burgers and canned beans. And I'm teaching her how to fix a leaky faucet and patch drywall. We're building something new, something honest, something strong. Last week, I took her out to Foundation Court. We walked through the courtyard. Kids were playing on the lawn. An older man was grilling next to the picnic tables. And Sarah looked at me and said, "You did this, Ethan. You didn't just get revenge. You built something better." And I looked around and realized she was right. I didn't just destroy Daniel. I created a legacy. I protected my town. I stood up for other builders like me, and I found someone who sees me not for what I lost, but for what I built. So if you're out there thinking about taking advantage of a good person, thinking you can smile, lie, and steal your way to success, think again. Because sooner or later, the foundation cracks. And when it does, you fall hard. And when you do, there's always someone waiting to build something better from the ruins.